One of the reasons for having the exhibition now is because it's the Guardian's 200th anniversary. It's a liberal, left-leaning English newspaper, very much sort of became politically aware towards the end of the 19th century, I suppose around the time there was debates about colonisation and the sort of Britain's relationship to the rest of the world.
As well as the Guardian being in its 200th anniversary year, the Photographers Gallery is in its 50th year, and photojournalism was very important at the beginning of, and at considerable points all the way through our history, and indeed our very first show was about photojournalism.
The Guardian, like all other newspapers, had a very tentative relationship with photography in the early decades of the 20th century. Photographs were used very sparingly, and that remained the case, I suppose, until the 1960s. And they were largely subservient to the text and very much illustrative of the sort of article itself. Obviously with 35mm cameras and colour supplements, and there was a complete explosion then from the 1960s onwards, and the Guardian was very much part of that. Well, the picture library originally was something that grew organically as photographs were added. There were two broad categories: people, personalities, and subjects, and there was no greater classification than that. Every file was marked up with anything new that came in.
So when you enter the show, there's a smaller selection of framed images and a very wonderful album and some works in vitrines that really draw out some of the key themes that we see as repeating through the decades of the collection. And then you enter into the back space where things are displayed in a much sort of freer form way, ignoring hierarchies, ignoring chronology, ignoring categorization. One of the things that we were really conscious of making sure was very visible in the show, and partly it led to our decision to display them in this way, not behind window mounts, is the actual physical markings of those editors' work. So there's a lot of hand-painted highlights, there's a lot of crop marks, the fronts of the images bear the kind of creases of time and being passed around an office.
Given the Guardian's explicitly liberal stance, it became obvious going through, and there is literally 100,000 files of photographs in the vault, but that the kind of themes which have sort of ricocheted through British society over the last 10 or 15 years were all there in spades: emigration, feminism, racism, the relationship with Europe, post-colonialism. This is a wonderful collection to kind of meditate on all of those sorts of things. I'd add to that even though the Guardian does have a liberal stance, it's important to remember 99% of the photographs here were taken by men and would have been printed by men. And I suppose the real question that Nesrine poses in her essay, which I think is central to everything, is how much is the liberal establishment in league with the establishment, and how much does it actually bring about change?
In one of the vitrines, we also have an example of the same image being used in multiple articles with multiple different intentions and kind of connotations. The other thing to think about really is how language has changed over time. So for the vast majority of the show, the captions that are used are taken from the back directly, so the language is of its time. There are some updated captions and that's indicated, but looking at that relationship between text and image and those societal shifts is also very interesting and is really allowed to come out through the exhibition. And in this moment that we're in, where ideas of trust and mistrust around news media in general perhaps are having a particular moment, it seems a really good point to look back on kind of a century of photojournalism and its machinations and how it functions.